The 6 pleasures the Buddha wants you to be addicted to. You may have noticed a phrase in the sutta we chanted just now. The cause of suffering is craving accompanied by passion and delight, which makes it sound as if all delight is bad, which sounds pretty discouraging. Does the Buddha want us to have a totally equanimous, blank emotional state? The answer is no. He actually recommends 6 kinds of delight on the path, and not just for the path. He says these kinds of delight can take you all the way to the ending of the effluence. There are passages that talk about where the Buddha himself delights in some of these things even after his awakening. The first topic is delight in the Dhamma, the fact that we have a Dhamma that teaches the way to true happiness. It wasn't just thought up by somebody, someplace. It was discovered after lots of experimentation on the part of the Buddha. And it's been verified by many other people over the centuries. Think about the Buddha's position after his awakening. He had found a state that was not conditioned by anything at all. Most of our ideas are conditioned by our perceptions coming in from our past background. But the Buddha was able to find something that was totally independent of his past background. That's why his teachings are true. He came back to the experience of the 6 senses from a different perspective entirely. He could see clearly what led to the deathless and what did not lead to the deathless. This had nothing to do with his preconceived notions. So we can delight in the fact that there is such a Dhamma. And it explains things very clearly. What's skillful, what's not skillful. When we suffer, what is the suffering, why we're suffering, how we can put an end to suffering. It explains all these things. So we can delight in the fact that we found this Dhamma. Think of all the people who, on listening to a Dhamma talk from the Buddha, would say that he had turned right side up the things that were upside down, or that he had brought a lamp into the darkness so that people could see. A world without Dhamma is a world upside down, dark. A world with the Dhamma is bright. Everything is turned right side up. So delight in that fact that you have access to that Dhamma. Then you follow through and delight in the fact that you can follow through. Those are the next 2 objects of delight that the Buddha mentions. One is to delight in developing, A is E, developing skillful qualities. The other is to delight in abandoning unskillful qualities. These are things you can do. As he said, if people couldn't do this, he wouldn't have bothered to teach. So, the fact that he bothered to teach means that you can do it. Some of the qualities that we have to abandon can be pretty hard. There's that passage where the Buddha talks about how you should abandon desire and passion, and he gives the example of a man who's been married to a woman. Then they get divorced. Later, he sees her laughing and chatting with other men, and he gets upset. He asks himself, "Why am I upset?" He tells himself, "Because I still have desire and passion for her. So why don't I just give up my desire and passion for her?" So he does. The passage makes it sound like it's something easy. You just flip the switch. But you know how difficult that can be. You look at people who've been divorced and how long it takes them to get over the divorce. In many cases, getting over the divorce from your defilements is just as difficult, sometimes even more so. So, it's not necessarily going to be easy, but it is something that can be done. We've got the example of many people before us. It's not the case that their defilements were lighter than ours, or theirs were make-believe defilements. They were real. They were strong. But those people could do it. And it's not as if they were superhuman either. You read cases in the Theragatha and Therigatha of people who were so desperate that they got suicidal because their practice would develop for a bit and then fall apart, then develop again, fall apart again. But they were able to pull themselves together and come out of that miserable state of mind and become noble disciples. So even if the practice is difficult, as the Buddha said, even if tears are coming down your cheeks over how difficult it can be, stick with it because the rewards are great. You know that analogy he gave. He said that if you could make a deal that you'd be speared by 300 spears a day, 100 in the morning, 100 at noon, 100 in the evening, every day for 100 years, but you'd be guaranteed stream entry at the end of that time, that would be a good deal compared to all the suffering that people go through from not having gained the Dhamma. So it may not be easy, but it is possible to abandon skillful qualities and develop skillful ones. And you should learn how to delight to whatever extent you can. It's a reason for joy that you can say no to a defilement, even if it's just for a night. As the Buddha said, just realizing that an unskillful quality should be abandoned, that in itself is skillful. Think that thought often, and you finally get to the point where you say, I might as well do it, might as well try. That's something to delight in. So those are 3 things to delight in. The 4th one is to delight in seclusion, finding a space for the mind where you can put down your burdens, where you don't have to deal with all the issues of other people, and you can focus on your own issues. Even if there are a lot of issues in the mind, the fact that you can focus on them and you don't have to worry about other people's issues is something to delight in. It's an opportunity that very few people have. Think of that story of the bull elephant. He lives with cow elephants. He lives with baby elephants. He goes down to the river. Well, they have already gone down to the river ahead of him. They bump into him as they go down and turn the water all muddy. So he goes off and lives alone. When he goes down to the river, the water is clean, nobody bumps into him. And then, when he has an itch here or there, he takes a branch with his trunk and scratches himself here or scratches himself there. He feels gratified. He's free from all that disturbance. In the same way, learn how to delight in getting alone. Get the mind to settle down. Get some pleasure out of the breath. Get some pleasure out of concentration. That way, you allay your itch and find a well-being that comes from inside. So learn to delight in that. And finally, the Buddha says to delight in 2 things that are actually epithets for nibbana. One is the unafflicted. The other is non-objectification. Unafflicted in the sense that you're not causing any pain to yourself, any pain to anybody else, totally without disturbance. A happiness that doesn't have anything to eat away inside. As for non-objectification, objectification is the type of mind state where you create a sense of who you are, and based on who you are, you need to feed. And because you feed, you have to get into conflict with others. So non-objectification is a state of mind where you're not getting into any conflict at all. You delight in these two things, not because you have them, but to the extent to which what you're doing is going to lead there. You're on a good path, and it goes to a good place. Learn how to delight in that, because the world will have us delight in all kinds of other things. There are people who delight in the idea that there is no real truth, no objective truth, so you can just make up whatever truth you want. There are even Dhamma teachers who claim that. They actually delight in non-Dhamma. But what kind of world is that where there is no real truth? There are people who delight in developing unskillful qualities and delight in abandoning skillful ones. For them, it's a lot of fun. There are people who delight in company, having lots of entanglements with other people, lots of networks. There are people who delight in causing affliction and being cruel. There are actually people who choose war. There are people who delight in conflict, again choosing war, and a lot of them have power. They're delighting in all the wrong things. That's the way of the world. The Buddha is offering a good alternative, a delight that leads to peace, harmlessness, truth, all the good qualities of Nibbana. So, delight in the fact that you're on this path. It's a good path to be on. It's a good path to complete, and we're lucky we have it. We don't know how much longer it's going to be available. All the teachings of all the past Buddhas have disappeared. Each new Buddha has to discover them all over again. And even within the tradition of our Buddha, there have been times when the path has gotten obscured by popular versions of the teachings. Think of Ajahn Mun having to find the way again, and all the trouble he went to. But now it's available to us. So take advantage of it. Delight in the fact that you have this opportunity. When the practice gets difficult, delight in the fact that at least you're heading in a good direction. You're not afflicting anybody. That's a cause for joy right there. To delight in the path. We tend to think of samsara as a place, but it's actually something we do. Literally, it means the wandering on. Although, as we said this evening, it could mean the bumbling on. People running blindly around, going wherever their desires take them, then reading the fine print afterwards, and then trying a new desire, and then another one and another one, keeping at it. So, even though you think that the path away from samsaraing is long, just keep remembering that samsara is extremely long, and it doesn't necessarily come to an end. We have to decide that we've had enough and we want to pull out. This requires work, and it requires patience. If we want to get out right away, it's like one of those Prison Break movies where they need a very elaborate plan, and all the little pieces of the plan have to be put together very patiently. If they get impatient, they ruin their chances. You've got to be very, very patient as you practice, which means you need something to sustain you. When the Buddha describes the stages of focusing on the mind as you meditate, the first thing you have to do, once you learn how to observe your mind, is to try to gladden it. And you don't wait until you've been meditating to gladden it. Try to gladden it first by the way you live your daily life, by being generous, being virtuous. This is one of the reasons why, when the Buddha introduced the Four Noble Truths to lay people, He would start out with these two topics: taking joy in being generous, taking joy in being virtuous. Or if he was discussing the basis for the acts of merit, acts of goodness, he described three: generosity, virtue, and the development of goodwill. Learn how to take joy in the fact that you can have goodwill for everybody, because you're aiming at a happiness that's not going to harm anybody, doesn't require anybody be oppressed. You're walking lightly in the world. Take joy in that. Then as you sit down to meditate, you can reflect on that, because you're going to be observing the mind. And the mind is easiest to observe when it's been doing good things, acting on good intentions, trying to develop skillful intentions. In other words, intentions that are not only good, but also lead to good results. If you've been leading a life where you've been harming other people, it's hard to look at the mind. I was leading a retreat one time, and one afternoon, a person in the retreat just started breaking down, crying. I was new to leading retreats, and there was nobody else who seemed to be responding to him at all. It was very bizarre. I found out later that this particular person had been a drug dealer, and it suddenly hit him. All the people's lives he had ruined in the course of his drug dealing. That kind of mind is hard to watch. So you learn to take delight in doing good, being generous, helping other people who are generous, being with admirable friends, people who have conviction, virtue, generosity, and discernment. These things lift not only the mind, but also the heart. Remember, we're training both the heart and the mind. In Pali, the word chitta covers both. So the practice is not just a technique for juggling concepts. You're trying to develop good qualities in the heart. And those good qualities make it easier to gain insight into the workings of the mind. So when you're trying to sit and meditate, you can reflect on your virtue. You can reflect on your generosity in the past. This is one way of lifting your spirits. The Buddha also recommends reflecting on the fact that you've been developing the qualities that make a person a deva. You take the list of the qualities of an admirable friend: conviction, virtue, generosity, and discernment. And then you add learning the Dhamma. Those 5 qualities can make you a deva. And here is where it's good to learn how to take delight in what you're doing as you get the mind to settle down. See it as a challenge, and you're up for the challenge. See it as a puzzle, an intriguing puzzle that you're trying to figure out. Why is it that the mind wants a sense of pleasure, but then when it gets pleasure, it gets impatient? What is the boredom that gets so overwhelming at times? How do you deal with that so that you don't give in to it? You don't identify with it. When you learn how not to identify with your thoughts, you learn an important skill, because it's in identifying with our craving that we get pulled on and on and on into this bumbling on. So you give the mind something good to focus on, like the breath. You can work with the breath. You can do all kinds of things with the breath. Think of the breath coming in the base of the spine, going up the spine, coming in the soles of the feet, coming in the palms of the hands, coming in through the eyes and the ears. Learn how to play with your sensation of the body. learn how to play with your perceptions about the breath. That's one way of making the meditation entertaining. The Buddha actually lists 6 ways of delighting to help you along the path. The first, of course, is to delight in the Dhamma, that there is a teaching that points out the true way. This Dhamma teaches the way to gain total freedom, total liberation, so you're no longer bumbling on. And that teaching is still alive in the world. So, learn how to delight in that fact. Then the Buddha says, you learn how to delight in abandoning and delight in developing. In other words, you delight in abandoning your greed, your lust, your aversion. You see it as a victory in the mind when you're able to pull yourself out of these things. As for delight in developing, of course, that means delight in developing skillful qualities. Things like mindfulness and alertness based on goodwill, compassion, empathetic joy, and equanimity. There are lots of good qualities you can develop in the heart and mind. Then the Buddha says, you try to delight in seclusion. Delighting in the fact that you're not being bombarded all the time by other people's opinions, other people's issues, that you can have time for yourself to get to really know yourself. Learn how to delight in that opportunity when it comes. Finally, you learn how to delight in 2 aspects of the goal. Of course, you really delight in the goal when you get there, but there can be delight in anticipating, 1, that there's a goal that's non-afflictive. You're not afflicting anybody. You're not afflicting yourself. You're not afflicting anybody else with the happiness you found. There are so many ways we gain our living in the world, so many ways we look for happiness that are going to be a burden on other people. The simple fact that we have this human body means that we require food, clothing, shelter, and medicine. A lot of people are put to a lot of trouble to provide all those things. But when we attain the goal, we're totally free from all that. This is one of the reasons why we have that contemplation of the requisites every day, to remind ourselves that we're born here with a big, gaping hole. This body that has so many needs. And we keep coming back. When we can't stay in this body, we try to find another one, then another one. Remember that there are lots of karmic debts that go along with having a body, and you're placing a burden on a lot of people. So you can delight in the fact that the goal, when it comes, is not a burden on anybody. It needs no requisites at that point. The other aspect of Nibbana that the Buddha has you delight in is the fact that it's what he calls non-objectification. It's a technical term. The Pali term for objectification, Papañca, sometimes is translated as proliferating thoughts. But the Buddha doesn't talk about Papañca in terms of how many thoughts arise. It's the type of thoughts that are the problem. Papañca thoughts are thoughts based on the perception, I am the thinker. When you have a thinker, then you're a being, and a being needs to feed. And as beings feed, they get into conflict. That's the point that the Buddha is aiming at when he talks about this way you have of objectifying yourself and others. It always leads to conflict, whereas in Nibbana, there's no conflict at all. There's no conflict inside you. There's no conflict between you and other people. It's total peace, total harmony. So you learn how to delight in the path of the practice and to delight in the goal of the practice. Because if you don't delight in these things, you're going to delight in their opposites. For instance, There are people who would take delight if the Dhamma were not here. In fact, look at many Dhamma teachers nowadays. They seem to hate the Dhamma. They keep wanting to change it. They don't want there to be a true Dhamma, just people's opinions. This is just somebody's opinion about this, or these were opinions of the Buddha back then. But back then is different from now, and we need something different. They delight in that there's no objective truth about what's skillful and what's not, and that pulls them off the path. Or people delight in developing their cravings, and they delight in abandoning any sense of shame, any sense of compunction. In other words, they delight in all the wrong things. They delight in being around a lot of people. They delight in getting engaged in conflict, getting engaged in things that oppress other people. These are the things that keep us in the bumbling on, in the worst sort of bumbling on. So when the path seems long, remember, there's a lot to delight in as you're following the path. You're on a good path, and even though you haven't gotten to the end, where you're totally free from placing a burden on others, and you're totally free from conflict, still you're heading in that direction. And you can see that the mind gets more and more at peace as you continue in that direction. It gets more reliable. You can begin to depend on yourself not to do unskillful things, even in really difficult circumstances. That's when you really feel safe. That's the main safety in life. When you know you're not going to do anything harmful. Which means, of course, that the only dangers you have to watch out for are the tendencies the mind still has, where it could do something harmful to others, could do something unskillful. But you delight in the fact that there's a path that shows you how to overcome those tendencies. So, learn how to delight in the Dhamma, delight in the path, so that instead of bumbling on, you get really masterful at following the path. It is a skill to be developed, and it's a good skill. It may demand a lot. It may demand a lot of patience. But as in those prison break movies, when you finally get out, you'll be glad that you went to all those pains, that you were that careful, that patient, that heedful. So learn how to be glad that you're on this path. As you gladden the mind, it keeps you going. It also helps develop your powers of concentration. That's the next step. As the Buddha said, when you've worked on gladdening the mind, the next step is to concentrate the mind. And the mind is a lot easier to concentrate when it's been gladdened by good things. When it's concentrated, it can begin to release itself from the things that have been burdening it, things that have been holding it down, restricting it. Because when the mind is concentrated, you can see what's going on inside it. It can learn how to say no to things that you realize have been causing unnecessary stress, unnecessary trouble. It's in this way that we develop both heart and mind at the same time. We liberate both the heart and the mind at the same time. That's what the practice is all about. When the Buddha was on his last trip, as he wandered around the last year of his life, that was one of the themes he kept talking about again and again. Noble virtue, noble concentration, noble discernment, noble release. It's the release that makes all these other things noble. And always keep in mind that it is a possibility. No matter how long the path may seem, the fact that there is a path related to release is so much better than the world that too many people live in. The world in which they don't see that there's a path to release it all. So it doesn't matter how long it takes. Learn how to delight in the path that goes there, and that's how you arrive.